This is Kevin Harlan. Black Friday game days coming to Prime, and it's going to be huge. Black Friday football is back with Bears-Eagles at 3 p.m. Eastern, followed by an Emirates NBA Cup doubleheader, Bucks-Knicks at 7 p.m., and then Mavs-Lakers at 10 p.m. And the whole day starts with the Capital One Skins game as 4 elite PGA golfers hit the links with $4 million on the line. Don't miss a moment of Black Friday game day. The Capital One Skins game at 9 a.m. Bears-Eagles at 3. Bucks-Knicks at 7. Mavs-Lakers at 10. And it's all only on Prime.
We've all done it. Stock our fridge with leafy greens and good intentions, only to have our future self sacrifice quality nutrition for the convenience of takeout. Keep your body and mind nourished all day with a whole body meal shake from Kachava. It's got 25 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, greens, and so much more. But the best part? It actually tastes delicious. With 6 indulgent flavors to choose from, it's easy to make a superfood-packed shake. From chocolate, vanilla, and chai, to matcha, coconut acai, and strawberry, you've got endless ways to personalize your Kachava. Whether you prefer it straight up or enjoy adding fruit, peanut butter, nut milk, or even iced coffee. With every 2 scoops of Kachava, you're getting 85-plus superfoods, nutrients, and plant-based ingredients. Shop now through December 2nd to get 30% off your first purchase of 2 or more bags with code NEWS at Kachava.com. That's 30% off for a limited time at KACHAVA.com, code NEWS.
We have got a wonderful podcast for you all this week. Novo Nordisk dropped huge data today. We got data from Lilly today. Lots in the world of obesity medicine, but also type 2 diabetes medicine, which we get really excited here about it on the pen. We've got also some data that dropped from Novo Nordisk on semaglutide, oral semaglutide, and the ravaging disease of Alzheimer's. So we're going to get into all of that and more on the podcast today. Let's get started.
Welcome to the On the Pen podcast with your host, Dave Knapp.
So this was a big week for On the Pen. I am going to get through this. I'm going to get through just a little bit of housekeeping stuff before we get started. The first thing I want to say to everyone who's watching today is happy Thanksgiving week. There is a ton to be thankful for in this Thanksgiving season. And when I sat down and really started to think about what I wanted to say, I thought about the posture of those at the first Thanksgiving, these people sitting around rough tables, with more need than they had certainty about the future, more questions, I'm sure, than they had answers about the future, yet they still paused. They still took a moment to look at what they had, what they did have, and say thank you. Not because everything was going perfectly and not because everything was easy, but because gratitude is often the only thing that will steady the hand of somebody whose heart is shaking because of what's going on. And that's sort of where I am today. This week, I lost my TikTok account, which was a community of just under 60,000 followers. And it disappeared with a single automated sentence from an algorithm that does not breathe, that does not know a single one of you. It doesn't know your stories. It doesn't know my story. In one moment it was there, and the next moment it was just completely gone. If you watched the video that I was doing, you actually saw our ticker, which sits behind me, and you saw that literally tick down as it was removed from TikTok. And so it was quite a moment to have captured there on the video. If you saw that, let me know in the comments. But one moment the community was there, the next moment it was just gone with no real warning, no conversation, no way to appeal what has gone on, just a slam door from an algorithm that does not understand clearly what this fight is about. Now, a lot of people have asked me why, what happened, what caused this. And all I can tell you is that this is a constant problem with the TikTok algorithm in that in its attempts to filter out content that may be harmful to people, uh, content that is helpful, useful, that builds people up often gets caught up in that. And so that's really what happened. We got some warnings on some videos over the last few days. These videos claim that we were promoting certain disorders. You can imagine and deduct what those disorders might be, which of course we were not. We were not. So we were unfairly targeted by the algorithm with no real way to have recourse. And so what we're doing now is we're focusing on rebuilding. And people may say, why are you doing that? Well, I'm doing that because we have sponsors on our podcast. Part of the value that we bring to the sponsors is the followers that we have on each platform. And so I'm committed to rebuilding this thing as fast as we can. And I think we can get to 100,000 followers on TikTok, which is even more than we had before we lost our account. If you all will just pitch in and help. So if you have a TikTok account, you can catch us at OTPHQ. That's OTP for On the Pen and HQ for headquarters. So at OTPHQ is how you get there. In just 24 hours, we're at 3,000. So I know we'll get there. And so that's why we're rebuilding. So as I reflected on this, I thought, even in the loss of this account, what I felt sort of welling up in me in retrospect was something that I didn't necessarily expect, and that was just thankfulness, overwhelming gratitude, not obviously for the ban itself, but for what it revealed about myself, what we built in this community that I am extremely thankful for, extremely grateful for every person who found On the Pen over the last couple of years. I am so grateful for you because after years of being dismissed, after years of being blamed or told that you just need to try harder, you found community. You took to this corner of the internet to the videos that we were doing, making news about obesity from the patient perspective. I'm getting some folks that are saying that the audio is not great, so I'm going to try to. This is the joy of being your own producer and your own really everything. I clean the toilets here too, so we do everything. So if you can give me some ideas of what's bad, particularly about the audio, that would be helpful. Otherwise, everything looks good on my end. So I apologize if we're having. This is like a lot of feedback. I don't know if I pull this back here. Give me just 1 second to adjust, I suppose. That's switching to the camera mic and then back to the podcast. Let me know. Anyways, we'll continue to move on here. I apologize if the audio is a little off this week. Not thankful for that. But you all took to this little corner of the internet to On the Pen, and you all really helped to build this thing that didn't exist prior to On the Pen, this obesity medicine news from the patient perspective. And we all together learned that what we were fighting is a disease. It's not a moral failing, but it's a disease. And GLP-1s are not and should not be a source of shame. It should not be something that we need to run and hide for. It's the whole reason that I wrote the book here, was for people to have conversations, to have better conversations with their loved ones, and to fight back against the stigma and fight back against the shame. So I'm so thankful because you pushed this patient-centered show into the top 20 podcasts in the entire country. Check this out. So this is something I wanted to share with you today. Just today, we hit number 16. Yesterday, we were number 17. Today, we hit number 16 on the podcast charts for medicine in the United States. That means the entire United States, all the podcasts about medicine On the Pen is number 16 in the country. We're in the top 1% of all podcasts globally. So if you want to help us crack that top 10, you can actually do that today by going and downloading our audio podcast and then scrolling down a little bit and leaving it a 5-star rating or review. You can get all of that by going to otplinks.com. It links to, like, literally it's the gateway for everything that we do here at On the Pen. So help us crack the top 10. But what an amazing feat that is. And I'm so thankful for that. I'm so thankful for our sponsors. I'm thankful for Shed for believing in the mission that all patients deserve access to affordable, life-changing medicine that treats the disease of obesity, that they deserve access to doctors and coaches and the proper guidance for how to get to the point where they're achieving their health and fitness goals. I'm thankful for Claimable, who actually saw a huge need in this community about how many people in this community were drowning through their insurance denials. A fight that shouldn't be yours to carry on top of everything else you're carrying. And I'm thankful for Shapa, who looked at the whole person and understood that weight behavior and shame that goes along with dealing with your weight cannot be separated. We have to find a better way to help people overcome that shame and the guilt associated with the scale. So Shed, Claimable, Shapa are all sponsors that I'm extremely thankful for. And your follows, likes, and shares are now more important than ever to continue to show our sponsors that you all are a community will show up and show out. And so I'm so thankful for everyone. There are partners. There are partners, and they really are helping me to do this full time. I literally, my first day doing this completely full time with no day job to speak of it all was Friday. That was the last day. And the TikTok account went away on Saturday. But these partners have put no pressure on me. They've made it possible for me to continue to show up and do my thing. So I thank them for their integrity and for their belief in what we do. And I would just ask that you help us build this TikTok back up. I think we can get it to 100,000 at OTPHQ. But most of all, what I want to say today, and I don't get too preachy too often, but I want to say thankful to God in a deep way, because the peace that I have about this whole thing really doesn't make sense. You leave your day job, and the next day you lose your largest account. Yet, by and large, after the initial shock, I have just felt a sense of peace, because I know that God is in control, just like those pilgrims at the first Thanksgiving knew that God was in control of the future, and that ultimately an algorithm does not control my future. A social media platform does not control my future. My future is held by the very one who saw fit to give me this platform in the first place. And I want to continue to do right by and honor that by honoring you all every day and bringing you news that helps you to have better, healthier lives. So that's the message today. That's the message today. It's just a message of thankfulness. And we're going to get into the news like we always do. And we're going to start off the news by talking about a clinical trial that did not go the way that we thought it would. So if you were following On the Pen this weekend, we put an article out about how we expected within a few days that we were going to get data on the Evoke and Evoke Plus trials. Now, this was a clinical trial that was testing oral semaglutide, Rybelsus. And so your first thing that you're probably going to say, if you're anything like me, is why would they test an oral, weaker version of GLP-1 in a clinical trial that by estimates cost $700 million to run, and was a clinical trial that Novo Nordisk themselves said, we don't have a lot of hope that this is going to turn out our way, but we have to try it. So they run a $700 million trial with a weaker GLP-1. You go, why? Well, because this is a very vulnerable population, people living with Alzheimer's disease. And this isn't a population that's out to lose weight. In fact, weight management, keeping bodies at a healthy weight, is a challenge. And so these current drugs and their current iterations are very powerful when it comes to weight loss. So in addition to having the ease of use of an oral daily pill in that routine, which is very good for Alzheimer's patients, the fact that it doesn't have a profound impact on weight at those doses, I think was the reason that they got that they went with Rybelsus at the lower doses. So I want to get into why this isn't all bad news, but really at the end of the day, while biomarkers were improved in patients with Alzheimer's, it did not actually translate into the slowing of clinical progression of Alzheimer's. So people did not decline slower. They didn't maintain their everyday functions based upon what's called the CDR sum of boxes. It's sort of the standard of measure in Alzheimer's clinical trials. And the clinical reality did not match up to the hope that we had, the biological hope that we had. And so because of this, Novo is actually discontinuing the extension of these trials, and the long-term follow-up will not continue. So the full data is going to come out in a couple weeks. But what we did learn was that there was an impact on the biomarkers of these folks living with the disease of Alzheimer's. And so I think this $700 million trial will actually pave the way for future trials, and all hope is not lost that this class of medication could ultimately someday lead to the positive breakthrough of information that these drugs designed to control obesity and diabetes could ultimately lend itself to slowing the progression of Alzheimer's. We just didn't get it with the Evoke and Evoke Plus trials. But I want to say a heartfelt thank you to the folks at Novo Nordisk, because this was a $700 million gamble. And again, that number has sort of been bantied about by investors and those who speculate about these things. I don't know that it's actually been published, but by all accounts, a trial that was running upwards towards $1 billion to just be a lottery ticket could this actually be the thing that slows progression of Alzheimer's? And while we didn't get it, we got data, and data is what drives the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And I do believe we'll see more on Alzheimer's in this space, especially as they look to develop versions of these drugs that target the mental pathway, but maybe don't touch on the weight loss as much. So it touches on the GLP-1 pathway in the brain, but maybe doesn't have as profound of effect on weight. We're actually seeing potentially something similar in brenipatide. And brenipatide is actually a medication that Lilly has in phase 1 or 2 clinical trials. We just covered it a couple weeks ago. And brenipatide is a GLP receptor agonist, but they're looking at it in neurological disorders. So think addiction, think even asthma, actually. And so these aren't necessarily conditions where you would want to be targeting weight loss necessarily. And so perhaps they'll find a way to target the right pathways to treat the right thing as time progresses and data flows about these. I wanted to take a moment to answer a question here from Mike, Mike on a Mission, who I want to say a personal thank you to. Make sure you follow Mike on all the platforms, including YouTube, at Mike on a Mission. But Mike had the question of, do you think they will keep looking at injectables for Alzheimer's? And I do think they'll take the information that they gleaned from this study. And again, we don't have all the data yet. Just we know that it didn't actually, meet the end point of slowing the progression of Alzheimer's. I think they'll take this data and they'll build off of it for the next thing. And so I do think that we will see. I think we will see positive things. And then Mike wants to know how you can help me in terms of helping OnThePen grow. The best thing you can do is follow these 2 accounts here. I never know which way to point here when I'm looking at the screen, but TikTok at OTPHQ is the account that you can follow over on TikTok. I'd like to get that. You can see the counter over here, live updating as people follow. If you can follow that, our goal is to get to 100,000 on that account by the end of the year. I think that would send a huge message to our sponsors and to those who maybe would look to continue to sponsor the work that we do. Please just follow that account. And then if you could follow our Instagram too, because Instagram is a great platform as well for OnThePen. You can find that at onthepen.official over on Instagram. So following those 2 accounts are the best way that you can support the work that we do. And check out our sponsors. Support them if you can. You can catch that all by going to otplinks.com. OTP links for OTP for On the Pen, and then links, because links. otplinks.com. We've made it very easy for you. Check it out and check out our sponsors. Those are the best ways that you can help me out right now in the wake of losing the TikTok account. So thank you for asking that question. That's very very kind and thoughtful of you. I would expect nothing less from my friend Mike, whom I love as a brother. He's a great guy, great friend. And I appreciate you, Mike. So we got this huge data on Alzheimer's. I think it sets the stage for future trials, but it wasn't the information that we wanted, which was a kind of a personal loss for me. Sue the Dude said, Dave, they will create a GLP-free GLP. Like alcohol-free beer. I think they're going to have to create a GLP to get us off the GLP, because I think people are pretty well hooked on these medications, and for good reason. But let's talk about some data that dropped today. So we got new data today on Amycretin from Novo Nordisk, which is an amylin GLP-1 single molecule, an oral and an injectable. We're going to go over that information. We're going to compare and contrast how that data compares to tirzepatide, because tirzepatide is the undisputed king of the hill. And then we got new data on orforglipron, which is the small molecule GLP-1 pill. I'm going to put this all in the context of what I think this means to you as patients on these medications. And just know that the data that we're about to share, when we talk about weight loss, we're talking about that in the context of people with type 2 diabetes, because that's where the data came from today. And so I just wanted to tell you all that before you start to hear these weight loss numbers and say, that doesn't sound right. It's because this is in diabetics. And one of the things that a lot of people don't know is that when you look at all the clinical trials, you look at the SURMOUNT trials for tirzepatide, they also ran trials called the SURPASS trials. So the SURMOUNT trials were in obesity and diabetes. So you had to have both. And then the SURMOUNT trials were in just obesity without diabetes. And they do that for all these trials. And it goes to show you, as you check out all the data from these, that patients who have diabetes just simply do not lose as much weight on these medications. And they don't know exactly why. The hypothesis is likely that it has to do with insulin resistance and all of the metabolic things that are gone awry in a body that has slipped into type 2 diabetes versus a body that has not. But they don't really know or understand completely why it is that people with type 2 diabetes lose less on these medications than people who don't. But the same is true in the real world without the medications as well. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to talk about the data that we got on Amycretin today. So Novo let us know a little about this study. So it had 448 adults with type 2 diabetes, metformin as the base, and many on SGLT2s as well, in a 36-week trial. And here's what happened. So the A1C dropped up to 1.8. So A1C is that 3-month rolling average of your blood sugars, dropped to 1.8. Matter of fact, I'm going to pull up my Substack article because that's going to be better data. Easier to read. So at the start of the trial, participants had an A1C level around 7.8 to 8. And by week 36, the Amycretin group at the highest doses saw up to 1.8% A1C reduction with weekly injections and up to 1.5% with the oral. So again, they were testing in tandem, the oral version and the injectable. And up to 89% achieved in A1C under 7. Up to 76% reached 6.5 and lower, which is good controlled diabetes. Unsurprisingly, the placebo group didn't move very much. So these are excellent improvements in A1C, but I think the most notable thing to make note of there is that actually is not nearly as good as tirzepatide. So for tirzepatide, what you ultimately saw was a reduction of over 2% in similar trials. Now, you have to keep in mind that not all of these trials were 36-week trials. This Amycretin trial was 36 weeks. The other thing that's important to know as we share data on A1C and weight loss is that in the shorter phase 2 trials, the SURMOUNT 2 trials, patients that got up to 15 milligrams were there. So you'd start on the 2.5, for 4 weeks, you're there. For 4 weeks, you're at 5. For 4 weeks, you're at 7.5. And then for 4 weeks, you're at 10. And then 4 weeks, 12.5. So after 5 weeks, patients are on the 15, and then they're there for the whole rest of the time. So you're talking about a good number of weeks that patients are on that top dose. Now, in this amycretin trial, it appears that patients were only on the top dose of amycretin for just a few weeks. So when we talk about these numbers for amycretin, there's more runway, so to speak. Does that make sense? There's more. We're going to see a lot more in the phase 3 trials than we saw in the phase 2 trials because patients just weren't at that higher dose as quickly. Slower dose escalation will mimic how it's used in the real world a little bit better. And I think how even the current medicines are used in the real world a little bit better than just slamming people with the highest dose to make Wall Street happy, right? So this ultimately what it does is it helps to have the patients tolerate the medicine, and it keeps people engaged in the clinical trials for longer, which is all positive things to consider when you're building out a clinical trial. So just be aware of that data. But when we look at the SURPASS trials for tirzepatide, which was 40 to 52 weeks, also in type 2 diabetics, people sat at that 15 milligrams for 20 weeks before their weight was measured. And so when we compare the weight loss between these two medications, if I can pull that screen back up, this is where it gets interesting. So on the 15 milligram dose of tirzepatide, it delivered between 12 to 14% weight loss by week 36 to week 40. So right around 14%. At 36 weeks on this amycretin injectable, patients were at 14.5%. But again, remember, those patients that were on the 15 milligram of tirzepatide were there for like 20 weeks. Those on amycretin, and I'm not sure I'm getting the math right on exactly how long, but many, many, many weeks at the top dose, where with amycretin, just 4 weeks at the top dose. And so we're going to want to see how that data plays out in the longer clinical trials when patients are on that highest dose for a longer period of time. So I'm just trying to put this information into context that helps you. So really, when you look at it, when you zoom out, when you're comparing amycretin data for type 2 diabetics in A1C and weight loss reduction, and you're comparing it to tirzepatide in a similar trial, it's very clear that tirzepatide appears to be superior in A1C reduction. But again, folks were at the highest dose for longer. However, it appears that amycretin will be superior for weight loss. And I think part of the reason is because amylin is one of those hormones that's like one of the first hormones to go haywire in a type 2 diabetic. Because amylin, and a lot of people don't know this, but amylin is co-secreted in the pancreas with insulin. And so obviously one of the big issues that people with type 2 diabetes have is this issue with, I'm trying to say this accurately as not a medical professional, but let's say dysregulation in insulin. So likely there's dysregulation in amylin as well. And so this amycretin combines a GLP-1 pathway and an amylin pathway all in one molecule, which is sort of similar to what they're doing with CagriSema, which will come out next week, or next year, early next year, which is amylin and GLP-1, but it's in two separate molecules. It's cagrilintide and semaglutide together. So this is like the next generation of CagriSema. It's like CagriSema 2.0 in one single molecule, if that makes sense. So tirzepatide is probably better for A1C control. We'll have to see how that plays out in the longer studies. And it looks like amycretin will be better at reducing weight in type 2 diabetics. But we'll have to see, and we'll have to let that all play out. Now, out here on the peripheral, we have data that we got from orforglipron in another study in type 2 diabetics. This looked at 600 adults with type 2 diabetes with a baseline weight around 101 kilograms, a BMI of around 36, and an A1C around 8. Now, this is a phase 3 trial. Now, the weight loss in this placebo group had 2.5% weight loss. And this was a 72-week trial. The 6 milligram dose subset had a 5% weight loss. The 12 milligram dose had a 7% weight loss. And then the 36 milligram dose had a 9.5% weight loss in 72 weeks. So you can see a lot of people, when they hear about orforglipron, the new GLP-1 pill that's coming from Lilly, a lot of people conflate it and get it confused like it's just the pill version of Mounjaro. It is very much not. It is a single receptor agonist, GLP-1, and it is a small molecule, non-peptide drug. It's literally nothing like tirzepatide. And that bears out, as you look at these numbers, 9.5% weight loss at 36 milligrams at 72 weeks. I think we were up over 12%, maybe even closer to 13, 14% weight loss for tirzepatide at the 15 milligram dose over a similar amount of time. So orforglipron it's just not the strongest, right? And that's going to be true across the obesity trials and the type 2 diabetes trial. It's going to be for less severe disease, and it's going to be the drug of convenience and scalability. It's strong. It's going to be enough for a lot of people. And so for people who are not willing to inject, it's the first oral that really looks like it's going to be really easy for type 2 diabetics to use. So that is a positive thing, I think. But at the end of the day, don't think of it this way. Tirzepatide looks like it's the glucose crusher, and it's the champion of A1C. Again, we're talking about type 2 diabetics, and it's right up there in the best in class for double-digit weight loss. Really unmatched metabolic control now. When we look at Amycretin, it's like the rocket. It's a 14.5% weight loss at 36 weeks. We don't know what it's going to be at 72 weeks, but we know it's going to be much higher than that, which is really exciting. And so that's still accelerating at that point, right? Orforglipron is the convenience player, 9 to 10% at 72 weeks, but easy to take. Daily pill might just fit right in there with your blood pressure medication, etc. So it's not about one winner. It's about finding which one's the right one for you. And we're just trying to bring you patient-centric information that's going to help you navigate the conversations with your doctor better, right? That's the whole point of everything that we do here. I want to stop and acknowledge that there's been a few questions here in the comments. Thank you to Hambone, who's in the chat, helping me organize these comments. Do you think they could do a study of GLP-1 for people who have dementia run in their family tree as a preventative, like a prophylaxis? I think that would be very exciting to run that as, it's like a hereditary thing. And I think really ultimately what we will see, and this gets into my, speculation, but I think what we'll see is if you can control your insulin levels over the long term, it's going to help slow the progression of cognitive decline. One of the things that they've observed in Alzheimer's patients is the buildup of something called amyloid plaque. And if you look at the studies about how amyloid plaque develops in the brain, there is a strong correlation to insulin levels in the body. And so I think that was part of the calculation that we saw from Novo Nordisk in this trial, is like, if we can control the insulin levels, if we can make people more insulin sensitive, they don't have as much insulin floating around in their system, perhaps we can slow the buildup of this amyloid plaque. I think that was part of the hypothesis, but I'm no more a molecular biologist than I am a doctor or an endocrinologist. I'm just a guy on the internet that reads this stuff and tries to bring you the information from the patient perspective. But I do think that would be a great trial. And I think that perhaps you could see something like that in the future. I think this is all moving towards more personalized medicine that considers those things like genetics, that considers things like things that you're predisposed to and how to use the tools that are out there as a prophylaxis. And you think about the disease of obesity. It's a very complex, multifactorial, relapsing chronic disease. And there's a lot of ways that people experience the disease of obesity and a lot of confounding factors that cause it and lead to the confounding, factors that are associated with obesity. I think this is all going to start looking at, blood tests that really look at, hey, which are the hormones that you're dysregulated in the most, and let's target that with this sort of cocktail of receptor agonists. And I think that that's ultimately where obesity medicine is going. And I think that's pretty exciting. So you'll see, I think, the advancements that these companies are making in AI. We do cover that news from time to time. We talk about, Eli Lilly is doing unprecedented things in AI right now, and Novo Nordisk is not too far behind them. And ultimately, what they're going to be able to do is run models and predictive models and sort of see what ways they can treat people on a more personal level, similarly to the ways that you see cancer. Somebody had a question, is it going to be expensive? It's all going to be expensive. I mean, how we deal with the inflated costs about these, with all these treatments and medications is sort of a separate conversation. But we'll have to see how that all shakes out. Another question, best way to boost weight loss when on a plateau and at the highest dose. I mean, one of our partners is Integrated Peptides. You can catch them over at the OTPlinks.com. This Can't Wait is a supplement that I use to help with appetite suppression. In the clinical trials that were run, or some of the studies, I should say, that were run for Can't Wait, it's called DNF10. It's a peptide that works on leptin and ghrelin. Ghrelin is the hormone that's associated with hunger, and leptin is the hormone that's associated with satiety. And so it helps to boost your satiety hormone and reduce your hunger hormone. And so I find this to be very, very effective. Obviously, it's not FDA approved. It's a nutraceutical. And so these comments have not been evaluated by the FDA, and it's not for treating, preventing, or curing any disease. But I find this to be very helpful. You can get it with a discount at OTPlinks.com. I think this is a great stall breaker. And if you've used it in the comments, let me know, and you tell your story in the comments if you've used the Can't Wait. That's a tremendous product from our friends at Integrated Peptides. So I think we're all pretty well caught up with the questions. I want to thank you all for joining us today, and just remind everybody that we do have a new TikTok account after the ban. It is at OTPHQ. You can kind of see them on the screen here if you're watching on YouTube. And then at OnThePen Official on Instagram. Those are the best ways to follow us now. Obviously, if you're watching this on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for notification, and hit the thumbs up. All of those things are very important. One of the things we talk about a lot on here is to train the algorithm. Train the algorithm. Every time you interact with our content with a like, a share, a comment, a subscribe, it tells the algorithm that this is important content for people to get. And so it's the easiest, cheapest form of advocacy. I also want to say thank you to Sandra and Debbie, who I can't remember who asked me to put my Cash App and Venmo links in my link tree yesterday, but I received a couple gifts, and I want to thank you very much for your generous gifts. All of the links that we talk about here are at OTPlinks.com. OTPlinks.com. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for being the best part of what we do. Thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for believing with me. I hope that you all have a blessed Thanksgiving. I hope that you all spend it with the people that matter the most to you, and I hope that it finds you reflective and thankful for the wonderful gifts that we have each been given. I, among all things, am so thankful for you, and so thankful that you put your trust in me each and every week for the podcast. Just such a pleasure to be here. I love doing this live with you when I can do it. And so I just want to thank you again for being here, and we will catch you all on the next one.
Since 2011, American Giant has been making everyday clothing with extraordinary effort. Not in far-off factories, but right here in the USA. We obsess over fabrics, fit, and details, because if you're going to wear it every day, it should feel great and last for years. From the cut of a hoodie to the finishing of a seam, nothing is overlooked. Our supply chain is tight-knit and local, which means less crisscrossing the country and more care in every step. The result is durable clothing, t-shirts, hoodies, sweatpants, and denim that become part of your life season after season. This isn't fast fashion, it's clothing made with purpose by people who care as much about how it's made as how it fits. Get 20% off your first order with code STAPLE20 at American-Giant.com. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com with code STAPLE20.
We've all done it. Stock our fridge with good intentions, only to sacrifice nutrition for convenience. Keep your body and mind nourished with whole body meal shakes from Kachava. It's got 25 grams of protein, 6 grams of fiber, greens, and so much more. But it actually tastes delicious. Try one of Kachava's indulgent flavors today. Shop now through December 2nd to get 30% off your first purchase of 2 or more bags. Go to kachava.com and use code NEWS. That's KACHAVA.com, code NEWS.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.